In 1862, at an academic exhibition in St. Petersburg, the public was introduced to a painting by an almost unknown artist, Vasily Pukirev, a graduate of the Moscow School of Painting. The work, titled Unequal Marriage, caused such a powerful reaction that the Imperial Academy of Arts awarded its author, a recent student, the title of Professor. This monumental canvas became one of the most recognizable works of 19th century Russian painting. Contemporary viewers were struck not only by the artist's technical mastery, but also by his extraordinary attention to detail. Every glance, gesture, and even secondary character carries hidden meaning, turning the scene into a complex dramatic narrative. To this day, the painting continues to captivate audiences with the many secrets seemingly encoded within it. Many researchers believe that the painting is based on a real personal tragedy, and that the artist depicted his own emotional experience. It is also suggested that two ghostly figures can be found among the characters in the painting, figures that should not be there. But is that really the case? In this video, we will explore this question. Let us immerse ourselves in the story of this painting and try to understand the messages the artist left behind. The scene depicts a wedding ceremony in an old church. In the foreground stands a young, beautiful bride. She has soft, light brown hair, a delicate figure, and a veil covering her head. Her face is filled with quiet sadness and submission. In her eyes, one can read silent despair. In her left hand, she holds a candle lowered downward, while her right hand is extended toward the priest, offering her finger for the wedding ring. Standing beside her is her future husband, an elderly man whose expression conveys not love, but rather arrogance and self-satisfaction. His stiff collar gives him an almost lifeless appearance, like a statue or even a corpse. He slightly turns his head toward the young bride, looking at her with a mixture of interest and desire. The contrast between youth and old age, innocence and experience, is striking and evokes a deep sense of injustice. Opposite the bride stands the priest, slightly hunched. His face is hidden in shadow. In his left hand, he holds a liturgical book, while with his right, he prepares to place the gold wedding ring on the bride's finger. At first glance, the tragedy of the situation is unmistakable. A young bride and an elderly groom, whose union is clearly not based on love. The artist skillfully places the viewer at the center of the event, making us an unwilling witness to this transaction. This crime against youth and genuine feeling. We become participants in the scene. The image of the young woman evokes sincere compassion, while the old man standing beside her provokes quiet condemnation. Yet, unequal marriage is only the surface. Beneath it lie deeper questions about the moral values of a society that places material wealth above human happiness. The painting exposes a world in which love is not protected, where young lives are sacrificed for status and fortune. It invites us not to argue with the artist, but to agree with his judgment. As we delve deeper into the painting, we begin to notice the figures surrounding the main scene. Each of them reflects social inequality and emotional tension. Their faces and postures are filled with meaning, encouraging the viewer to reflect on the unfolding tragedy. Some express curiosity, others indifference, even malice, and occasionally sympathy. Each figure represents a fragment of the moral climate of that era. These characters can be divided into two groups, those aligned with the groom and those with the bride. Among the groom's entourage, a distinguished military officer and the man beside him openly and shamelessly examine the bride. Now look at the figure standing behind the bride. He gazes directly at us, the viewers. His expression is ambiguous. It seems to contain sympathy, yet there is also something unsettling in his look. There is a theory that this figure was based on Pukirev's friend from the Moscow School of Painting, Pyotr Shmelkov, who may have inspired the artist to create the painting. Another important figure stands behind the bride, a tall young man with his arms crossed. He looks at the groom with visible dissatisfaction. His expression is filled with pain and despair, sharply contrasting with the indifference of others. If you look closely, you may notice that he bears a strong resemblance to Pukirev himself. There is a theory that the painting is closely connected to the artist's own personal drama. According to this version, the bride represents Praskovya Varentsova, a woman Pukirev loved. He proposed to her, but her parents rejected him, choosing a more suitable match. Praskovya had little say in her fate. As an illegitimate child, her future was largely controlled by her father, a man from a noble family. Naturally, her parents would not allow her to marry a poor artist. For many years, nothing was known about her fate, until in 2002, researchers at the Tretyakov Gallery discovered a pencil drawing made in 1907 by the artist Suhov. It contained an inscription, Praskovya Varentsova, with whom the artist Pukirev painted his famous Unequal Marriage 44 years ago. At first glance, everything seems logical. The artist depicted his own personal tragedy in the painting. However, there is another interpretation, an even more intriguing one. In the Tretyakov Gallery, alongside the original Unequal Marriage, an early sketch of the painting is also preserved. Let's take a closer look. What do we see? Behind the bride stands a completely different man, his arms crossed. This is not a self-portrait of the artist. Even more intriguingly, in this version, the same surname appears. Varentsov, the very same as that of the woman Pukirev loved. A coincidence? Or is there something we don't yet know? The explanation lies in the fact that Vasily Pukirev had a friend, Sergei Varentsov, who fell in love with a woman named Sofya Rybnikova. Both of them came from the same social class, the merchant class. However, Sofya chose another man. He was very wealthy and, of course, older than both Sofya and Sergei, though the age difference was only 13 years. At the wedding, Sergei served as the best man. That is why he is depicted standing behind the bride. Not confused yet? It seems that this story, told by Sergei Varentsov, inspired Pukirev to create the painting. However, as time passed and emotions settled, Sergei decided to marry another woman. Meanwhile, Pukirev had already immortalized his friend's earlier heartbreak in Unequal Marriage. To avoid an awkward situation, the artist chose not to change the title or the subject of the painting, but instead removed his friend from the composition. In place of Sergei, he depicted himself, having experienced a similar romantic tragedy. The groom in the painting is not merely an old man, but the embodiment of authority, discipline, and a soulless system. The Order of Saint Vladimir, second class, gleaming on his chest, speaks of long and impeccable service, of a life governed by rules and duty. Yet behind this outward display of virtue lies emotional emptiness, an inability to feel genuine affection. It is precisely this contrast that Vasily Pukirev emphasizes. The composite image of the groom makes the painting especially striking. Many contemporaries recognized in him the features of familiar officials and landowners, those willing to sacrifice the happiness of others for the sake of power and wealth. Pukirev managed to strike a nerve, exposing the true nature of those who saw women merely as an extension of their social status. And if you think that is all, the painting conceals even more unsettling details. Look closely at this fragment. Behind the general's shoulder stands a woman, but something about her is off. Notice how her features seem blurred, indistinct compared to the surrounding figures. The answer is chilling. The old woman is not a living person, but a ghost. It is difficult to explain her presence at the ceremony in any other way. She is the general's former wife. Observe the expression of contempt and hatred with which she looks at him. The eeriness is intensified by the fact that she is dressed like a bride, wearing a wedding wreath and veil. However, that is not all. The painting appears to contain the ghost of yet another, a second deceased wife. If you look carefully, you can spot a dark-haired woman in a bridal wreath, standing directly behind the priest. This is the general's second wife. She is much younger than the first, yet her fate seems no less tragic. Many art historians suggest that these ghostly figures serve as a warning, a foreshadowing that misfortune awaits the young bride. This mystical interpretation only deepens the sense of tragedy. The shadows of the dead wives, gazing with disdain at their former husband, become a visible embodiment of ruined lives. They stand as a silent accusation against a man for whom career and status outweighed love and human warmth. The artist seems to suggest that in a world devoid of love, a person loses their soul, becoming an empty shell. In the image of these ghostly brides, one may see not only accusation, but also a philosophical reflection on the nature of love. Perhaps the artist wished to convey that every person has their true counterpart, and only by finding it can one achieve genuine happiness. A marriage of convenience, devoid of love and mutual respect, is doomed to suffering and disappointment. Perhaps one should seek a partner for the soul, rather than for the ego. The painting Unequal Marriage seems to cry out that such unions should not be accepted as normal in society. It compels us to reflect on the value of love and how often it becomes a victim of social status and material wealth. This is not merely a depiction of a wedding ceremony, it is a statement against injustice and hypocrisy. Pukirev's later life was as tragic as the story depicted in his painting. He never managed to build a family, his fortunes declined, and although he continued to paint, buyers were scarce, and audiences no longer responded with the same enthusiasm as they once had to Unequal Marriage. This was a severe blow to him as an artist. He turned to alcohol, abandoned his teaching career, despite having been a professor at the Academy of Arts, and eventually lost his home. In 1890, forgotten by nearly everyone, he died at the age of 57 in humiliating poverty. In the end, Pukirev is remembered as the painter of a single masterpiece. The fate of his beloved was equally tragic. Her marriage to the elderly man brought neither happiness nor wealth. She spent her final years in a poorhouse. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you found this story interesting, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really helps support the creation of new videos about art, history, and their hidden stories.